Okay, welcome to the Voyager training webinar. This webinar is on intermediate SEO or search engine optimization. Some of you may or may not have been here. We actually have another webinar, or we did another webinar on SEO, on search engine optimization. This is going to cover some of that information we'll probably go over again. We're going to cover some other information as well, some really cool tools and tips and practices that will really help with your search engine optimization. Just to double check as we get going here, if you can hear me and if you can see my screen, you should see it says Visitor Engagement Tools for your website and social media. Please say yes or I can hear you or something. Just type it under, I believe it says questions in the right kind of toolbar. If you could just kind of give me that info so we can make sure we're getting out there. Okay, excellent. Looks like everyone's getting through perfectly. So we will go ahead and start. If you do have a question, go ahead and type it into that box. We're probably going to just hold off and get to all the questions at the end, so I may not answer it while we're going. So, feel free to type it and we'll take a look at those at the end. Okay, so we're going to be kind of what we're going to be covering is both, again, some tools and a lot of little information or little tips that you can use for your, search engine optimization. It's going to be a lot of information actually because there's a lot of little tips we're going to cover. Remember, we upload all of these webinars to our content site. You can find them. I'm up here. I'm logged in to content.voyagerwebsites.com right now. If you go to Help and then Webinars, first from the top, you can find all of our past recorded webinars. This is the previous one on search engine optimization right down here. So we'll be uploading this, and it's probably going to be a good tool to come back and look at again. Again, we're going to be covering a lot of stuff, so in a way I'm apologizing in case something moves by too quickly. Feel free to ask us if you do have any questions on this. agentsupport@voyagertravelguides.com. Most of you are already emailing us, but feel free to show us an email or call 904-404-8521 if any questions come up. And again, you'll be able to go back over this webinar later. Mostly in this webinar, we're going to be focusing on what's called on-site SEO, search engine optimization. It may or may not go without saying, but one of the best things in search engine optimization is actually external SEO, and really what that is external links. That's going to be other websites, other agencies, other places linking to your site. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with, our website platform, so we're not going to look at it as closely, but suffice it to say that marketing in general is what that basically entails. There are a lot of good resources on that. If you have a question, feel free to contact us and we can point you in the right direction. But on-site SEO is really valuable as well, and those are the changes you can make within your site, within the content you do and things like that, to really boost your search engine optimization. Now we're going to start, oh, by the way, before I get going too much, we are actually in the middle of a pretty big thunderstorm. We're in North Florida. If I stop talking or it cuts out at all, chances are we lost power or we lost internet. Sorry about that if it does happen. But once again, we're going to upload this later, so if that happens, just look out for the uploaded webinar at a later point. We're going to actually start with the blog. This is voyagerwebsites.com. This is actually, some people don't know, this is actually run on the same Voyager Websites site editor platform that a lot of people are using, or sorry, that all of you guys are using. And so we have a blog that's been running on here. We have a lot of really good updates that we've been putting up. I recommend actually kind of going through here and checking these out. The reason why we're going to start and actually focus a lot on the blog is because that's actually one of the best places to kind of get SEO going. That's where the meat of SEO, especially on-site SEO, comes from. And the reason for this is because, frankly, there's no magic tricks to SEO. There's no one button you're going to hit or one switch you're going to flip that's just going to shoot you to the top. SEO is really about good, well-documented content And having good, well-documented content will always be rewarded. That's really the name of the game in terms of on-site SEO. And again, that gets back to something we talk about a lot, which is best practices. Having really good kind of practices for updating your blog, for updating your site, keeping it fresh, keeping people there. We're going to get into some of that in a little bit. But broadly speaking, that's why we're going to focus on the blog today. And that's the true power of a blog. You should really be taking advantage of the blog. One of the most common questions, though, if we are talking about a blog is, well, what do I blog? What am I supposed to say? How do I come up with ideas? Luckily, we've actually helped out, or we've taken care of that a little bit in terms of helping out with ideas. We have white papers, which not everyone knows about, basically on this exact topic. Once again, I'm back here in the content library. If I go to, and then the very bottom here, resources, I have two links: white paper, blogging for travel agencies, and white paper, 1 year of content ideas for your blogs. Both of these are really, really excellent resources. You can see this one, blogging for travel agencies. As I scroll through it, is promoting blogging with authority. This is kind of a more general overview on on blogging for a travel agency website. The second one is actually really cool. It's actually a whole year, theoretically, of ideas for blog posts. Now, you don't necessarily want to go through, I mean, you could, that'd be fine. I think most people would probably get a lot of use out of this by instead nitpicking kind of the specific ideas that you want to take. It's 52 for a year. And I recommend just flipping through it, and you may see things that jump out at you that you're passionate about, that you're interested in writing about and communicating to your to your clients. How to use a travel agent, how to avoid high hotel bills, find the best airline deals, pack for the TSA, dress for the airport. These are all kind of that an agent might have a lot to say on, that you could get some really excellent content out. And so I recommend taking advantage of these if you kind of just need things to blog about, because again, something like a blog is going to be really, really powerful in terms of SEO, just to get that good, well-documented content on the site. With that being said, we're going to move over to this blog one more time. So in terms of on-site content, there's three things you want to look for with content that you get on your site. You want your content to be clear, you want it to be engaging, and you want it to be contextualized. That last one's a little bit weird, contextualized content. We're going to take an in-depth look at that a little bit later, but we're going to start with clear content and engaging content. And there's some basic tricks that really help with SEO that we're going to look at to make sure your content, once again, is clear, engaging, and is contextualized properly. Okay. So I'm actually going to move now over to the website editor. This should look familiar. Once again, this Voyager website's site is just on an editor, exactly like the one you guys use. So updating a blog here is pretty simple. If you want to know more about that, we have some information in the FAQ. We can link you there if you have a question about that. We're going to open up this recent blog post, Competing with Online Travel Agencies Successfully. In terms of clear content, we're going to start with clear, how to make sure your content has a lot of clarity to it. There's a lot of different strategies that you want to focus on, and I'm just going to start listing some of these, and we'll talk more in depth about them as I go along. One of the first things is you want a very relevant title. You want to make sure your title is very, very clear to exactly what you're talking about. This goes, again, we're focusing on the blog. This goes for pages as well. If you have a page that has resources in it, chances are the best title is going to be resources. If you have a page that's about Mexico, best title will be Mexico, or destinations Mexico. If you try to get too long, if you try to get too kind of crazy with it, it's probably not going to do well in SEO. The reason why is because links which are descriptive, and we're actually going to go into this later as well, but links which are descriptive, which are clear and concise, will actually do really well in SEO. One cool thing with this Weebly platform in general, or the Voyager site editor platform, is that the title, with a blog, the URL up here actually defaults to whatever your blog title is. So you don't have to worry about that. It is something that's important. Just for for general reference, it's really important that the URL is reflective of what's on a site. And you saw a URL that was like blog, 71515, all these different weird /this part of the site, whatever, all these random numbers and stuff. This is a very nice URL. It's clean, it's clear, it describes exactly what's on the page, and that's really, really useful. Again, the editor takes care of that for you, but it's important to remember that these are the things that are really going to help. Going back and getting into the actual content we have, keywords are, in this context, means things which are identifying the content on the page. A lot of what we're looking at when we're talking about clear content is just making sure that it is evident to a search engine what this page is about, what's going on with this page. So keywords in this case has to do with travel agencies, has to do with competition, marketing, business, those kinds of things. If you can get those words into the content of the page, bearing in mind that's better to, it's not worth it doing that if it's going to be really, really visible, really noticeable what you're trying to do. So don't just like click here and start typing random keywords out of context. Work it in naturally if you can, but it's going to help a lot, again, with helping those search engines kind of recognize what exactly is going on with the page. One thing I kind of thought about when researching this is that a lot of these tips are a little bit like when you were a little kid learning how to write an essay. One thing they talk about with essays is, make sure your thesis is clear. Make sure the purpose of what you're writing about is clear. Same thing holds true for web pages, same for blog entries. Make sure it's very, very clear within the text itself, within the title, exactly what you're talking about. Moving into a kind of different frame of mind, certain things you want to add clarity for are things like meta tags for images. I'm sure you've heard about this elsewhere. It's actually brought up most of the time you talk about SEO. But a meta tag is about clarity because, once again, it's defining what an image is, actually both for search engines, but also for screen readers, for things like that, and just for anything that's not a human, or sorry, not even anything that's, looking at the page in any way or trying to figure it out from a certain angle. If you don't already know, to add meta information to an image, you saw here I'm in the editor, you just click on the image, scroll down in this context menu to Advanced, and in the bottom here, I already added some here, woman racing in the mud. That's basically what's happening. But if it's not there, it will actually say alt text. You want to be, just basically try to state exactly what the image is. If you can, tie it in to the context of what the page is. That's why I was trying to include the word racing. You could also have just said woman competing in race, something like that. That ties it in with what's going on with this page. The image and the page tie together because it's a woman racing. If you were, if it was a page on, Mexico or hotels or something, then you would want it to tie in with the theme of the page, whatever the page is about. It's really important to mention that. Someone asks, is meta tag the same as an alt tag? Yes, it is. It's actually meta is kind of a broader category. There's meta information about the image, and part of the meta information is the alt text. That's the whole thing, and so that's what you should be adding to all your images. Okay, moving down a little bit, still talking about clear content. One thing you want to think about is when you put links into your page, you want them to be descriptive of what they're linking to. This is actually kind of interesting because this is something that's changed from the early days, what we might call the early days of writing online through to today. It's now, so you see here in this page, take the time today to go to Travelocity or Priceline and look at the site with critical professional eye. Okay, so regardless of what it's talking about, when it talks about Travelocity and Priceline, it actually says what the link is. It's linking to Travelocity.com and Priceline.com. And it actually says the word Travelocity and Priceline. A temptation you might have, especially once again, if you're thinking in a more old mindset of working with text online, is to kind of bury links, to put them like in places where it's not stating what the link is. Probably the worst offender is here. So the word here, if you had a sentence that said, you know, here's an example of blah, 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 but you made the word here a link. Here is not a descriptive word. It doesn't tell me what the page actually is. Maybe the rest, the context of the paragraph does, but again, if you're thinking about this from a search engine, which is looking at your page and trying to decide what your page is about, the word here associated with the link doesn't really thing. The great thing about when you do something like this is that now a search engine like Google knows that whatever this page is talking about, clearly Travelocity, Priceline, those things in that context matter for this page. In that context is big because we're talking about those things with those words. If I said, you know, travel agent business and link to travel research online, similar idea. I'm stating exactly what I'm linking to, and I'm helping the search engines out actually with sort of telling them what my page is about. It works in a weird reverse way like that. I'm telling it what's going on with my page. Okay, that's actually all we have pretty much on clear content. We're going to move on to engaging content. There's other things you can do to make content a little bit clearer. A lot of it is actually relatively, oh, I actually forgot one. Sorry, real quick, also, use title elements. You see over here, we have title, text, image elements. Hopefully you're familiar with these. Title elements can be good. Actually, this page, this is kind of defined as a title, so you're pretty much good on blogs. On a normal web page, or even in this context, if you had somewhere down the page, if you were going to reference some other piece of, or you know, if you're going to start another section of the page, title elements are great in terms of being able to, once again, just explain to the search engine, hey, this is what this section of the page is about. I sometimes see, and it always makes me feel really bad, I sometimes see an agent or, you know, someone on a website will use a text element, because you can obviously format these things, right? I can sometimes see someone will use a text element and say, so let's say I was going to introduce a new section of the page and call it, I'm just going to write example page section. So you have formatting ability. So sometimes people will highlight this, you know, bold it, make it bigger, and think, okay, so that's now a title. But it's not. What's really important is that to a search engine, that's not any different than this. So it doesn't know that this part of the page is talking about this topic. The reason, and so that's why you want to use, we'll delete that. That's why you want to use, if you are doing something like that, again, on a blog or even on your web page, the title element. A title element has a, has a designation in the page's code, which is much more, you know, specific, or sorry, tells something like a search engine, this is a title, this is important. So that's the advantage of using title elements in that context. Okay, now we're going to move on to engaging content. Again, there's other things with clarity, but you know, we're just going to we're covering those intermediate kind of little tips and tricks that will help you out. So in terms of engaging content, one of the worst things if you were for SEO, one of the things that will hurt you most is if you have poor, what's called dwell time. Dwell time is, as you might imagine, the time that a user is dwelling on a page, the time that they can kind of sit on it for a moment. So for example, if I was in a search engine and I clicked on this blog and I sat here for a moment and then clicked back, they actually recognize when that happens. That is a bad thing, and it's going to hurt your search engine optimization. Obviously, the best way to fix this is to just make sure your page is engaging. Make sure it has content that sort of asks and makes people stay and dwell on the page. So that's kind of why, again, that well-written, really engaging content is so important. I'm going to emphasize once again, we have these white papers, resources, white paper. These are going to be really, really important, you know, or these kinds of resources would be important for making sure that you're making really good content that people actually want to read. That being said, you can come up with your own ideas as well, and arguably that's better. Anything original is actually going to increase that dwell factor, because, you know, if it's unique, if it's a thing that someone hasn't read 1,000 other times, they're probably going to hang out on the page to read more about it. So bear that in mind. Always try to think about what's keeping this person on this page. In terms of strategies for that, one thing is actually images. Another thing is videos. Multimedia content has been shown to keep people on pages, to make you kind of hold on a second. If I open the page, especially a blog post, once again, and it's just a wall of text, chances are, unless I'm really interested in it, I'm not really going to read it. I'm not going to be interested in it, and it's not going to tell me anything, or I don't want to sift through that in some ways. What you want to do is you want to try to break it up with multimedia content. Images are an obvious one, and it's almost a gimme. It's, why would you never or ever not use an image in a blog post, in a web page? It really makes people it increases the visual appeal of a site, and it makes people hang out for a second. It makes them wait, at the very least, so they could see what the image is. Video is like image, but tenfold. We actually did a webinar in video marketing. I'm sure some of you were there. And that's one thing we talked about, that videos are even better than that, better than images, because they are obviously they're moving, they give you this dynamic thing, and chances are people are going to stop and at the very least watch it for a second. Facebook capitalizes on this hugely with, if you're scrolling through Facebook on your phone, the video starts playing as soon as you scroll over it. And think about how much more often that makes you stop and just look at it, if only to say, man, I wonder what's going on here. So video, multimedia, things like that can really help with engaging content. Finally, long content, and that should be used sparingly, but it's worth noting that if you have, a really good amount of information, chances are people are going to engage with it more. People are going to stay on the page. If you have a blog post that was just a couple sentences or really didn't have anything there, then they're not going to click on that page and stay there. If you had a web page set up, this is arguably a bigger deal actually. We have here this features page that has several different sections, but if this whole page, if there was a whole dedicated page to just this one section up here, someone might click on it and there's not a lot of content. You don't have a reason to stay. As it's set up, you'll probably, hopefully, flip through it. You'll say, okay, I want to know more about impact. I want to see what's down here. Those kinds of things are going to be really, really important. Once again, you want to increase that dwell factor of someone actually staying on a page and reading it. So compared to clarity, compared to clear content, engaging content is a little more trickier. Obviously, it comes down to creativity. It comes down to things like that. But those are just some general tips in terms of, making sure that you make content that's really useful for people. Okay, so finally we're going to move on to contextualized content. This is actually, I think, where things get most exciting, and we're going to branch out from the blog and go into some other cool tools here. Contextualized content is just the essence of making sure that your content is placed in context of what it is, of what it relates to, of it should. And really, if you think about it, this is kind of the meat of SEO, because what this is about is making sure you have content that a search engine thinks this is relevant to what this person is searching for, right? So, the whole premise of a search engine is that it's trying, when I search for something local, if I search for pizza, for example, it's trying to think, what is this person looking for? What's relevant to their topic? Do they want to know about, if I searched here, do I want to know about a pizza parlor in Italy if I only typed pizza? Probably not, because I'm not in Italy, and it's not, it's not a hugely important thing. So making sure your content is properly contextualized is huge. That's arguably the biggest thing with SEO. I kind of hinted at this with that example, but maybe the biggest thing with this is local contextualization. Local contextualization is kind of the nitty-gritty of basically establishing something that makes you and your website unique and will bring it up in search results. One way to think about this is, apparently there's 15,000 travel agencies in the U.S., at least by one figure that I found. And if you didn't have anything defining your site as local, you're competing with 15,000 different travel agencies, which means you're probably not even in the top, 4% or 5%. And even if you were, that could be pages and pages deep on Google. So what gets you to the very, very top of a page? This is actually a cool test that we can show real quick. If I search travel agent, I didn't put anything else in, what comes up? First thing we see here, we're located in Tallahassee, by the way, 3 Tallahassee travel agents. Right there, first thing I see. I didn't type Tallahassee, I didn't type Florida, but I can start, and right here, Travel Agent Central, same thing, Tallahassee Travel Agency. Also at the very top here, even the paid advertisements, Florida travel agents. There's people paying because they know it matters more to me that I'm getting in touch with something local in this case. So those things are heavily, heavily rewarded. If you think about that, someone just randomly searching for a travel agent, if you have proper local contextualization, is going to find you quicker, or is going to find you very, very easily. Especially, this starts to pay off even more so if you combine niche specialties and local, local contextualization. If you're a scuba company, or if you specialize in scuba travel, scuba Tallahassee means that if I just say, man, I want to travel scuba, and I type agent, or maybe I don't, you will come up near to the top of that page. So local contextualization is key. One place where you're going to find this actually playing out, we're going to close out of this blog real quick. Okay, so within the context, many of you know this already, and I think the last webinar covered it, but we're going to reiterate it because it's so important, is where the SEO keywords are in this platform. To find them, we're just going to go to Set SEO, and here we go. Now, you see here site description. This is what comes up in is the site description within Google, right? That little blurb that comes up beneath the page title. But here's where that really comes into effect, meta keywords. You want to make sure that these include, local keywords. You want to make sure these include niche specialties. These are hugely important. We actually try to do this for you, by the way, when we set up your site. So if you go there and log in and checked it now, if you haven't already, you'll see some things there. But how much we can find out, or how much we can enter about your agency. You know where you are and who you are better. So if you take a look at it and try to customize it with those things in mind, that's going to be really, really important. Someone asked about that they're a home-based agent, they don't want their address being shown. The one thing, if you notice, I wasn't actually technically saying address, I was saying location. Obviously, address is powerful and would be probably better, but you can also just put in keywords about location. Things about your general, in our case, we're in Tallahassee, Florida. I could put our address, but I can also just say Tallahassee, Florida. I can even maybe put an area code. That's pretty general. So it's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily come down to actual address. At the very least, if you can get location in there, that's going to still be really beneficial and still really help with that. Now, I kind of pointed out the keywords there. It's also worth noting that this is where something like a contact page comes in handy. Let's actually pull one up real quick. So on this example site we have, I'll go to the contact page. There is, again, a location. This is an address. This is our address. But once again, you could just put location, Ace Adventure Travel, Tallahassee, Florida 32303. And that's still going to really help you with search engine optimization. Remember, these things, a lot of this is about the search engine, which is essentially just a robot crawling around your site trying to figure out what it's about. If you have this kind of text there, that's going to help tremendously. One other thing, we're actually going to dive into those kind of local contextualization a little bit more. Before we get to that, while we're still pulled up here in the site, just a couple, or actually we should pull over to this site, just a couple other things that's worth bearing in mind. Internal links are actually going to be hugely important. Internal descriptive links are really good for, again, contextualizing your content, because a search engine can recognize that you're describing things about your site. This is actually a great example. We have a Safari page, a page about Safari Vacations on this site. So we have an internal descriptive link that says Safari Vacations. And if I click on it, it'll take me back here. So that tells the search engine a lot. It tells it that this page is about Safari Vacations, duh. It also tells it that the page I was on references that matters for this page and is something that comes up. That plays in the blogs as well. If you had a blog that was talking about a destination of which you have a page on your site, definitely link to that page, and again, be descriptive in the link itself. One other thing is that, some people have noticed on a lot of our sites we have buttons. We use that button element a lot. The button element's great because it draws you visually. The other cool thing about the button is that you can make it descriptive about what you're linking to. It can be as simple as contact us by clicking here. It can be something like check out our travel specials. Those are all very good for SEO. Once again, it's an internal descriptive link that is telling the search engine things about the page that is on and the page it's linking to. So that's really, really important. Finally, and I kind of talked about this a little bit when we were up on clear content and talking about linking out to other pages, outbound links to relevant content are important because of, again, they're kind of telling the site something, they're telling the search engine something important about the page itself. So to go back to this example, and I kind of talked about this, but just to reiterate, Travelocity and Priceline, this is what, I found this term that's so great, a relevancy signal. This is a relevancy signal to a search engine about what this blog post is about. It probably has something to do with travel since we're linking to Travelocity and Priceline. That kind of thing, an outbound link, that's a little trickier for agents. You want to, a lot of agents you don't want to link out to things too much because you want to keep leads flowing back to you. That's one reason why we actually practice that with our travel specials app and things. But if you can find anything external that's going to benefit you, that's going to give people good information about what you're doing, then that is definitely a plus. If you can work that in, again, it's a relevancy signal and it tells a search engine important things about the page that you're linking from. Okay, so we talked a lot about things that we're doing on the site, and we're going to keep talking about on site, but we're going to actually go outside of that a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about Google. As we're talking about search engine optimization, it's kind of a funny thing because we use that general term of search engine, but by far, I'm sure you know, the vast, vast, vast majority of searching is done through Google. And so, Google is obviously really, really important if you want to get your your SEO right. Let me actually go back to my search. Here we go. So one thing is that, we have here these local businesses. They appear on the map. We have information on them. We have a website link for them. That's actually huge if you really think about it. Having that information right up to the top, locally contextualized, that's a big deal. If you don't already know, you can do that. That's totally free of charge. Google just offers it because, again, they're trying to just make sure all this information is collated correctly. So if you were curious, here's the page you need to get to. Easiest thing, not unironically, is to just Google Business. Google Business. If you Google that, it'll be pretty much the first result. You can also go, this is google.com/business. And they're going to walk you through exactly what you need to do. You don't have to have someone ask before about brick and mortar store. You don't have to have a brick and mortar store to do this. You can be home-based. They will give you the option of, displaying that information or of having that thing available. You can just be kind of generically local. You can search here, but if you search and it doesn't come up, because it asks you first just if they already have your business. If it doesn't, you can do add your business and then get all this information in there. I believe that you need to have a Google account. We are logged in our Google account. So you have to have a Google account, and definitely you do for the webmasters, which we're going to look at in a second. But that's, most people have that. If not, it's a powerful thing to have, so I recommend it. Here you would enter this information. This last tab, I deliver goods and services to my customers at their location. That's where it's going to matter in terms of the brick and mortar store or not. So if you leave it checked no, your information will still be there in the local results, but it's just going to tell people there's no place to go. It's just kind of a service or something like that. So once again, google.com/business, Google Business, that's going to be really, really helpful, especially, you thinking about those local results. It's basically part of what this is designed for. Finally, we're actually going to take a look at one last thing, Google Webmasters. If you don't know what this is, it's a really, really cool platform. It's something Google set up explicitly to help people with web design and with search. You can see right here, you want to be found on the web, we want to help. What Google Webmasters does is it tracks site search performance, and it kind of just gives you tips on what you can do to increase your search engine optimization, essentially. Now, bearing in mind that's with Google specifically, but once again, Google is basically the only people you need to think about. So I can walk you through real quick the process of setting up Google Webmaster Tools. I guess I should have mentioned it's free. So if you have a Google account, you can set it up, and it's completely compatible with our platform. So let's take a look. Once again, google.com/webmasters, or just search for Google Webmasters, and it's the first thing. You'll be on this page. You can read more about it. We'll go ahead and click here. Now I'm already logged in as our company account. You can see some of our different some of our different websites over here. If you don't have any, it'll just actually invite you to add a property. You can see we have that button up here. It'll just go ahead and take you straight there. Or if you're not logged in, it'll ask you to log in first. So I already set up earlier today VoyagerWebsites.com. So I can go ahead and click on that in this dashboard. Now, right now, there's no data available, but as people search for my site, as things are happening, this is going to start filling out with really useful information. And again, the whole purpose of this is to help you understand these things. So nothing is going to be presented that doesn't kind of explain itself. That's what's really cool about the platform. You might have noticed that it even tells me right off the bat, since I just set this up, improve the search presence of VoyagerWebsites.com. And it's going to start telling me some things that I can start doing. It's going to tell me things I can set up, adding different versions of my site, selecting preferred version, target country, sitemap file, all these different things. It just basically immediately says these are what you can do, and it will help your search engine performance with Google. So this is an unbelievably useful resource. With that in mind, let's take a look at what you do to set it up. This will be the last thing we go over, and it's pretty quick actually. So, you would just click Add a Property here. Asks you, what's your website? I already set up VoyagerWebsites.com, so let's actually go ahead and do Ace Adventure Travel. So here I've just pasted in aceadventuretravel.com. I'm going to click Add. Okay, so this is really important. The other great thing it does is it verifies your ownership of the site. And so it's basically, it's declaring that you own the site. It's letting you access all the Google search information for the site and things like that. Now, they have this recommended method. This does not work with our platform. Don't do it. You want to go over here to alternate methods. And you want to click on HTML tag, the very first one. Add a meta tag to your site's homepage. So they're going to give us this meta tag. All you got to do is copy all this. So I've now copied that. I'm going to pause the screen real quick because I actually have to log into the editor as Ace Adventure Travel. Okay. So now I'm in the editor as Ace Adventure Travel. Where you go from here, it's actually going to look pretty familiar. We were just there. Settings, SEO, and down here it even kind of tells you Google Webmasters verification meta tag. Just go. We actually have some. These are just meant to speed up your sites. Just go beneath them and paste. So I've pasted in that meta tag code. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click Save. Super important. And then make sure to click Publish. So the site's going to look the same because you only changed something in the meta of the site. It's not a huge change. But if I go back, wherever it's open, here it is, go back to the screen I was on, and I click verify. It's gonna, so it just looked up the site, it saw that the tag it gave me was in there, and so they verified that I own the site. And that is all there is to it. We're now in here. By the way, I don't know why you would, but just to point this out, don't take that tag away at any point. It's not going to slow down your site or anything. And once you take it away, you're going to lose that verification. So just leave it there. It's perfectly fine there. Now you have this all set up. These things are going to start giving you information as you go along. They're going to fill out. And again, it's going to give you some tips and things as you just kind of hang around. Next time you come here, it will even say, oh, oops, I have to go back to the front. It'll say Ace Adventure Travel, and it gives me those same tips that I was just talking about. It tells me, hey, you should do these things, and it's going to help with your search engine optimization. One thing I'll go over real quick, because it's one thing that's different with our platform that you may come up against. There's a part when it's talking about improving the search performance that talks about submitting a sitemap. You can read more. Once again, there's a lot of great information here. You can check here to read more about the sitemap. Sitemaps are just a way for Google to kind of know more about your site. What's cool though is they kind of give you all these different things of how to create and add a sitemap, blah, blah, blah. The platform actually just goes ahead and it generates one for you. It's super simple. It's already created. Every one of your sites has it. So if I clicked right there on, add sitemap, over here in the top right, add test sitemap, I'll click that, and I'll just type sitemap.xml. If you really want to, you could test it. You can even actually go to the site and just type this, and I can see that this file, it does exist. If it pulls up, it exists. If it didn't exist, I would get a 404 page. So the sitemap does exist. So once again, back here in Google, you just have to type sitemap.xml. I could test it. I'm just going to go ahead and submit it. Refresh the page, and there it is. So it's telling me it knows, all the different links on my site. It knows all the different pages on my site, and that's now going to help it in terms of crawling my site, in terms of creating search engine links to my site. That's the only one I wanted to go over because you may not know, there's no reason necessarily to know that your site already has a sitemap.xml. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. They walk you through a lot of really valuable stuff. Again, I can't recommend this enough. Google Webmasters. Once again, you can just search Google Webmaster. It's the very first result. And you can follow those instructions to get more out of that. Okay, that is actually everything I had planned to talk about. Once again, those are there's maybe a lot of little bits of information there. We are going to upload this underneath Help Webinars right here in the content library. I'm going to stick around and answer questions, but if that's pretty much concludes the webinar. Thank you so much for attending. If you have a question, feel free to submit it. And as always, contact us if you have any other questions at any time at agentsupport@voyagertravelguides.com or just call 904-404-8521. Thanks for attending, and once again, I'll be answering any questions you have. Okay, I had a quick question about co-branded page, in this case a co-branded cruise page. If you have co-branded pages on your site, hopefully obviously you're linking out to them. So it will grab that link out, but other than that, the SEO for that page is going to be on that page. So whatever platform that's on, whatever company you have the co-branded site with, all the SEO for the page specifically has to do with them. That being said, having good links between the two, or at least in one direction, will help both sites because it's drawing that connection, and once again, it's informing the search engine about what connects those two sites and what those two sites are about. In terms of whether Google will find those co-branded sites, again, that just depends on the SEO being done on that specific site. It'll be basically the same things that we're talking about here, and it will be connected with your agency. So, as that improves, the other will improve. But that's entirely to do with making sure you follow those same SEO principles on that site as well, because it is a different site if you have a co-branded site. Oh, sorry. I just saw the second half of your question. You were asking if Google will find it in the webmaster information. It will not. Once again, it's a separate site. It's a totally different site. So you would want to, if you had access to do this, you could add that site as a second site. But you saw that part where we were having to verify we owned it. You would have to do that for them as well. Depending on the platform, there's several different ways. I guess you maybe saw that. I can't go back there. At any rate, you maybe saw there's several different ways to verify ownership. So, one of them might work, but you would need the access to do that in order to get the co-branded site in Google Webmasters. Okay, doesn't look like there's any other questions. Great. So once again, thank you guys all so much for attending. We are going to upload this probably early next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. Hope you have a great day and hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.